Hi guys, Gary here again for GenVFX. Today we're going to have a little tutorial and it's going to be about building something that we would normally do inside of the standard modifier. Basically it's displacement, but about how to do displacement inside of geometry nodes. I do want to do more stuff with geometry nodes, and this is a good example of how to do something which in fact makes a better job than displace, and that is basically displace, but it feels more like it's the A.N.T landscape system, which is a default add-on that comes with Blender. But there's it allows yourself to do lots of interesting things with it, and I was trying to work out a way to do kind of a rolling landscape, not a cycling one, because I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to get that to work. Although I do want to know if I can do it at some point. I have to really dig down deep to get it. But no, this is how to do a rolling landscape, basically, or just a landscape, but with a little bit of extra on top. So let's not faff around anymore. Let's just get on with this, because this is something else. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to leave, unlike the past and unlike every time today, I'm going to leave the default cube in there. I will be getting rid of it very quickly. I'm going to go straight to the geometry node section, and you can see here's our if you've never used geometry nodes before, this is our spreadsheet which shows us the vertices that we have on our mesh. And if we look at faces, you can see there are 6 faces and none of them are set to shade smooth. For example, if I now go shade smooth, all those ticks are on. Let's just turn that off. Shade it flat again. And how many corners we have, and which there are bundles, obviously. So that tells you all the information about currently what's going on with your geometry that you're looking at. Obviously, there's no geometry node in there yet in this geometry node window. So I'm going to make a geometry node setup by clicking new. And now we've got a geometry input and we've got a geometry output. And essentially that is the cube. But I don't want to use that cube. I want to make something a bit more interesting. I'm going to make a grid. So I'm going to add mesh primitives down here. It's interesting because you want to go geometry, but no, mesh primitives. I'm going to get a grid. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to drag that and drop that into the geometry. So now there it is. There is my grid. And I'm going to keep that input. I'm going to use it in a bit. So I'm going to keep that input. The reason why is because you can connect other things in here, and then you'll see them appearing here in the geometry nodes, which is really useful. It means I can, if I wanted to, I can increase the number here. In fact, let me just turn on wireframe here. And as you can see here, I've just set in the vertices here, I've set that to 23. I can just scoop that around and then increase that one as well. You'll also notice how fast it is. That is something else about geometry nodes. They are quick as. So I'm going to disconnect these for now, because I don't really want, there's not these I want to actually connect up. So let's just get rid of those. If we go into group, we've got that there. Yep, we can delete it that way and delete it that way. There you go, over there. Okay, so what we've got here is our grid. There's very few vertices on it at the minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the number of vertices to say just 30 for now, and set the size to say 10 by 10. Why not? And let's pull out of it so we can see all of our lovely points. And also we can see our camera. We see our light, which I'm not going to get rid of because I'm going to use them. And well, that's it really. I've created a grid. Goodbye. There you go. How'd you do it? No. I want to basically transform the points on this grid. I want to move them around to create some sort of landscape thing. Now, the best way to do that, of course, is with something textural like a Musgrave, which gives you height values, or a Voronoi, which will give you like that sort of like Clint's and Grike's kind of feel, you know, sort of raised sort of sections with cut gaps down them, or you could use a noise. We're going to use noise in this instance, but my brain, and this is what I'm going to show you very quickly, my brain says if I want to transform that, I need to use a transform. So let's go geometry transform. So I'll put a transform there, and then I want to be able to move this and move that and move that. I want to be able to add some maths in there. That's what I want to do, don't I? Yeah. So let's go, well, I'll add some vector maths. So let's go vector maths. And if I put this into here, I can then look, I can move that around and that around and that around. So right, okay. So what I'll do is I'll then add another vector into this. Simple enough. Let's just add, well, let's go into texture. Something that's basically 3-dimensional. So it's a vector based, get a noise texture, and I'll plug that into there. No. Transform is for transforming your object, not for transforming the vertices, or in this instance, points. even though it is vertices. For some reason in this software, when it comes to this thing, it refers to it as points. Just get rid of those two, and I'll just replug that into there and get rid of that transform. What we need to use is something called set point, which will do a lot more for us than the other stuff. So let's go to here, let's go to geometry, and we're going to go set position. I'll drop that in there, and now we can do the same thing. We can move this and move this and move this. So set position basically is a set point thing. So what I'm going to do, if we look at this, is I want to make some alterations to the position. So I want to add something to the position to change its position. Now, I know that sounds a bit balmy because that's the obvious thing. I want to add something to the position. But if I wanted to add something, say, I want to add a noise texture. So let's go add noise. Let's go to noise. Let's go to texture, go noise. There's some noise. We know that's a value. I can't plug it into each of these individually, so I need to plug it kind of into the offset or the position. I want to plug it into position, but I can't. So I need to. How do I do that? Well, that's obviously you plug that into there, and you can see how it's gone from a white to a blue. It's taken any of the values and just gone up, and the lines become a fudge because it's just trying to position all of those in exactly some sort of vectoral space that's incorrect. We only want to affect the Z position. Now just reset all of these a second. Leave those where they are. We want to alter the Z position that's currently there. So in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to basically find a way to take one value of this and plug it into that position. Okay, so let's do that. So let's go vector, let's go combine X, Y, Z. So that means we've got all the vector information that we need to plug it into the position. And you'll see that automatically says, hang on, everything's set to 0. So you go, okay, well, I'll set these to 1. Would that be like a regular thing? No. Everything's still in that central point because we've added a single value to absolutely every single point, every single vertex. What we need to do is we need to make sure that the additional information that we are going into, so that doesn't actually work. That's because we're basically resetting the entire position just like that. What we need to do is find a way of taking that positional data, putting it in front of our change, then plugging that back into the position. It's almost a way of sort of like saying, I want this somewhere else so that I can plug this effect into it in the middle. So what we need to do is go and basically create an input called position. And then we drop that down there. We then plug that into our position. So that takes all the vertex information and keeps it at the front. And then from that, what we can then do is then we can then add our stuff in between. So if we add some vector maths, I think this will go into utilities and add some vector maths, we can then use those as the combine feature for this actual positional change based on the texture. So we're going to go to vector here and get some vector math, and I'm going to plug that into there. And now if I do this, you can see that it hasn't screwed up the positions at all. Everything's in the right position. And then if I do this, I'm adding values to the position of all of those points. They're not resetting, not all making a big point in the middle like they were. If I unplug this, you'll see, boom, back to that little point. I'm saying I want the position of these points, which looks like it should be coming from here, but it's not. It's just saying I want the position of these points as they exist. I'm going to add stuff to them here and then plug it into that position there. I'm just basically moving this point over to here and then doing something here with the maths. Now, as I was saying, we need to be able to add something to this to make this fracturing get higher. Now we work in Blender with Z as being the up. So we're going to take this factor here, and you can see it's already, if I just zoom in here, it's grey and it goes into greys, and we can do that. So that now is adjusting the value of whatever the noise value is, that's going into the Z. Then I can plug this into here, and you can see it's moved straight away because these have got 0s and 1. It should be 0, they're 1. And then you can also see that the Z value, the noise, is now going into each of the points, very much as if it was a displacement texture. So if I increase the scale of that, you can see if I reduce the scale of that, you can see it's kind of looking like slightly wavy. Obviously now we need some more points, I think, really, just to make it a bit more standy-outy. So let's go here and let's set that to 200 and set that to 200. And you'll notice, by the way, the one thing in particular about this is that is quicker than using displacement in the modifiers. It's a lot quicker. In fact, let's show you how much quicker it is. If I just push around things like the detail and the scale, you'll see it's changing it very, very fast. Very fast indeed, which is superb. Right down to even the distortions. I mean, as I say, this is the best way to add that sort of like landscapey kind of feel to it. If I just very quickly, I'll show you what I meant about the other texture, the Voronoi. If I create a Voronoi, this has only been in for a while now, plug that into there, and let's scale that down. See, that gives you kind of like that sand dune kind of feel, which is quite cool. I think if we change is the positional one? There you go. So the positional one does all sorts of lovely funky things. But it gives you that kind of, that's giving you like a step thing. But if we get the color one, I think that one, there we go. That one's probably better. Gives you that kind of like sort of structural kind of crackler, as it were. And then of course you can reduce the randomness to make it into lovely little cubes. Increase it to make it more random, obviously. Now, I'm going to just go back here and get rid of the Voronoi. Although part of me just says, let's just show you what they all do. But I'm not going to do that because it's pretty obvious what they do. And at the moment we have this lovely sort of kind of textural kind of landscape. And if I increase the scale of this a little bit, maybe just maybe increase the, let's just increase the detail, and let's reduce the roughness somewhat. And let's bring it to sort of like here. That's kind of nice. I like that. I can live with that. So at the moment, what we have going into here is that just one height thing. Now, what I want to do is I want to add. I want to be able to control. I want to be able to control basically the scale X and Y in that. Why would I want to do that? Because it's a texture map. I want to be able to control the position, the movement of it. So what I'm going to do is I am going, and this is where this comes into its own again. Let's just move these a little bit over. Move that to there. And move this to here. I want to do some vector math changes to this noise texture. So I'm going to go down here, go to vector, vector math. I'm going to change this to multiply. And before I go any further, I'm going to set all of these to 1. I'm going to take that and drop that into there. And you can see it's all gone away. It's all gone away. Why is that? Because we haven't got the position plugged in. That's why. So we plugged the position into that, and now we've got back exactly what we had before, because we still need to have that positional data into here before it'll do any of the calculations further down the line. Okay? So I'm going to plug that into there, and now if I change this X multiplicator, that's not a real word, multiplier, say so it's a 0.2, we kind of get this sort of like it's in the X, we're getting it sort of like stretched. If we set that back to 1, set that to 0.2, and you'll see we get the same thing in the opposite direction. So you can kind of do all the sort of funky little things, and again, it's really quick. It's so quick, which is great. So, and then I kind of, again, I like that, but well, I want more control over the height of this thing in places, because at the moment, this basically the noise texture essentially is 0 to 1. Now, we could use some remapping if we wanted to sort of flatten the top off. So anything that reaches a certain value locks. So we could kind of like make it sort of like flat topped, if you see what I mean. In fact, let's just try that, because I'm pretty sure that's one of the ways you can do this. So if I go add and go into the utility, and we have a map range, and I drop that onto there. At the moment, we have setting the minimum from 0 and 1 to 0 and 1. We're going to, if I just reduce this, you can see that. There we go. Right. If I set that to 0.9, nothing 0.8, nothing 0.5. There we go. What it's doing, it's kind of moved everything up. If I set that to -0.5, you can see that that sort of like also sets it so it's kind of like lifted the bottom area up. If I set that to 0 again, you can see that's where 0 is pretty much. It shifted the whole thing up as well, because it's setting different height values for stuff. So that kind of like clamps off the tops, which is why it's set to clamp. You can see there with the clamp on, it sort of like chops off the top, so it kind of creates that sort of like mesa kind of feel. So we can sort of like flatten off the tops. We don't have to set those to 0 and 1, but we can always adjust those. But so if I say, well, that's all right. Yes, I want that 0 to 1 thing. That's good. I can reduce that. So say set that to 0.5. Now they're very much sort of like plateauing, but there's lots of them. And then we can decrease and increase our detail accordingly still, but we still keep that information there because it's happening after the noise texture. What we could also do instead, which actually I'm going to do instead because I actually prefer it, is I want to be able to control the fall off of that value between 0 and 1. So I'm going to go and add in here. It is in here, it's in the utility, it's called a float curve. So if I do that at the minute, because that's going from 0 to 1, it doesn't change anything at all in our values. I'm just going to try and bring this here. There's it down a bit. No, I keep on doing the wrong one. Right, I'm going to bring this down a touch. There we go. And if I take this curve and I pull it down in the middle, you can see it's pulling the whole lot down. But you'll also notice it's kind of flattening it off. The value is going from 0 to 1. It's being killed, pretty much. If I push this up, you'll see it moves up the whole thing and creates these kind of lumps. If I can't really, unfortunately, it doesn't sort of like adapt in real time, but it kind of does. So what I'm going to do is going to bring this down here so we have that pretty much where it was. I'm going to bring this back up to here, and it kind of pushes them back up on the next part of the curve, which is great. And then we get our kind of plateauing there. So if I bring this down, you can see it's kind of softening this off again. There we go. So we're kind of getting our mesa all over again. And if I increase the roughness there, I can adjust the distortion ever so slightly, and I mean ever so slightly, maybe 0.05. Just get a little bit of a pushing, sort of like a squidging of our texture, the way it's sort of like moving around. So if I do this, it kind of pushes, it pushes the shapes a bit and gives you this kind of sort of like, as if the land has been sort of like worn away, lower down, by water erosion kind of thing. It's got that sort of like feel, and that's really quite nice. And you think, oh yeah, that's nice, but I still would like a bit more detail there. I still think the detail's a bit limited. Well, do you know what I'm going to do? Let's just increase these vertices to 300 by 300, and straight away, even without any hardship at all, it just does it. It just does it really quickly, really nicely, and is really quite nice. But we don't have to have this mesa effect. We can have like much more pointed kind of stuff. Or we could push it up here, and that essentially flattens it off the ground more, because if I get rid of this, you can see it does that. Let's just delete that point. It's kind of gives us back our sort of distortion ground here, for example. If I lift that up, it kind of pushes it back up a bit more, and if I push this up here, it kind of softens it off again, because it's kind of forcing it in different directions in relation with the float curve, away from what it should be, which is kind of relatively flat. But if we can pull this middle one down quite a bit, you can sort of like really throw things around, so it's a much more well, much less linear. How's that? That sounds better. And that's all well and good, that's nice, but then I can go back here and I can go, right, well, I want to scale this a little bit more that way, so it feels even more weather worn, as if it's been hit by the wind. And let's just bring these back to roughly a bit more, oh, there we go, a bit more sort of like valley-ish by doing that to them. We're getting a little bit of a, maybe if I bring this, yeah, I think maybe if I start to get to a point where I can really start seeing polygon edges, it's not going to look great. So we've got that. Now I want to basically make this, I want to make it move, I want to make it animate, I want the shape to animate through. So we've done this multiply, which allows us to change the scale X and Y. and Z not at all. That's because we're affecting the Z further up, which is why it's paying no attention to what we're doing down here. And I'm going to add into this chain here another vector maths, and I'm going to leave this where that one is multiply. I'm going to leave this one as the default ag that just drops into place. So if I push this, you'll see that it's kind of throwing the texture. It's actually translating the position before of the texture. So it's pushing the texture left and right. Well, and then I'm pushing it forwards and backwards here, or this is forwards and this is left and right. This one's forwards and backwards. But also, this one also moves it up and down, which because that way we're actually changing the position of the noise texture, and that. I love that. It's great. Which means that not only could you use it for a rolling texture, if I just reset this curve, and I will, in fact, that looks kind of pretty actually. If I just scrub through this, it kind of has a kind of a watery kind of like feel. So you could always do a water texture. Not to mention, of course, that you can layer these up. So you don't have to just have one noise texture. You could have another noise texture, which you also combine together in here, and you add in on top of this. So you can keep on going, keep on adding stuff to it. But what I'm going to do here is let's just do this again. Put this kind of back to where it was. Yeah, man. There you go. Put a bit of that up there. So we just kind of flatten off the land bit there like this. And I'm going to go to our camera view, and at the moment it's all the way over there. I'm just going to set this to 0 and 0 and to 0. And I'm going to change these scales. So that is 1 and this one is 0.3. There you go. So I've got some nice sort of valuing things. Let's go down here. Now at the minute the camera's a bit high. So let's very quickly go into view, camera to view. What is wrong today? And it's Easter, folks. I'm losing the plot. So I'm going to move this and I'm going to make it so that let's just move that out of the way, so I can see the most I can see of this without seeing the edges, which is about there, I think. I like that. And I am going to press N again, and I'm going to unlock that so the camera's now fixed, so I can zoom in and out without it all going all over the place. And I want to animate the offset of this. So here we go. This is why we kept the group input. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this here. I'm going to drop that in there. And I'm going to call this, because it's now invisible in here, I'm going to double click on that and I'm going to call it translate. Have I spelled that right? I have spelled it right. And then I'm going to take this one, this multiply one like this. I'm going to drop that into there. I'm going to call this one, scale, like that. What I'm also going to do is, I think, let's just leave that where it is. Yep, that's looking good. Let's put the roughness up a little bit. I mean, if I wanted to, let's just do this. Let's get rid of that distortion. In fact, no, let's put the distortion back, because I like it. It looks cool. If I want to, I could take the roughness and drop that in there as well, you see, so I could animate the roughness. So you've just put those controls into the group input, and you've got total access to them outside of the actual node. All very useful. So if I now go back up to my geometry node, I can go to my translate, so not that one. So I need to basically be in animation. I am going to not translate that one, I'm going to translate this one. So let's set it somewhere like, let's set it to minus 20. And let's insert a keyframe. And then let's move to frame to 50. Let's set that to 20 and insert a keyframe there. At the moment, if we look at that in a graph editor, which I think, if I can do this correct, is Control and Tab. Hey, there you go. You can see our curves are designed to automatically go into Bezier curves. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to press T, and I'm going to change it from the lovely bouncy ones. There we go, for the Bezier to linear. So now it's just as a constant speed running through like this. Whee! But now, so what we could do, you see, is make a little spaceship and have it just flying around a bit during that thing. So it's like going a little, it's going which would be quite nice. I might actually do that, actually. And set some materials on there. Now, here's a few other things you need to do before you set any materials, because geometry nodes don't like picking up materials from over here. Let's go back into our geometry node over here. And I'm going to do a couple of things just outside of here. There's our grid. In fact, I mean, we can move that to there. We can move it to there, wherever we want. But I'm going to go up here, and after this position, I'm going to add into here, mesh, set, shade, smooth. And that basically smooths the whole thing off. If I turn off the wireframe, you can see that's now nice and smooth. If I just let's just reconnect it that way. There you go, not smooth, smooth. Of course, what we can do as well is we can increase the amount of these to something ridiculous. And let's go back into animation and let's press play. Now that's slowed down a bit, but that's still not bad for real time for 600. I mean, how many? Let's find out. How many vertices is that? That's 360,000 vertices, and that was running at that speed. That's not bad. That's 719,000 edges and 359,000 faces, all shaded smooth. Maybe that's a little bit high. Let's set that back to 300 by 300. Now we're down to something a bit more, something which is can run in real time, which is better, which is much better. So that can now run this way. I've actually realized, I've animated this the direction that I don't want it to go. I want it to go in this direction. So let's pull this and pop this back here, and then pop this down here, and we should have basically, there we go. So I can put something flying this way, whee, which I'll probably do. So now we've done the smoothing, that's fine. What we also now need to do is we need to make sure it can get a material on it. So we go to here, to material, and we go set material, and we can drop that, and then we can put a material on it. So if I go into here and I create a new material, and I'm going to call it, let's call it landscape. I'm going to here and select landscape, and I can go, ooh. So yeah, so you know, you can go, ooh, that's nice. Let's change the color of this, or we could do it with some textural stuff, which I will do. But basically, yeah, that's what we that's what you're gonna get with doing some nice geometry nodey stuff. And I'll leave this on here for a second. The geometry nodes. It's not a great big chain, really, and it does look pretty nice. And if I just, let's turn on cavity, and let's do both, and let's push them up so they're really nice. And let's drop this down here, push in, and I'm going to bring in, because why not? Why isn't there not? I always feel there should always be, or these should always be in here, these timeline things. And just press play. There you go. So we've got a nice rolling landscape. It looks slightly spacey, but you've got control over that to be able to do what you want. Listen, I'm going to leave it there. I am Dunsky. But I hope this has been of some use to you. I actually honestly believe that this just, if you want something that you can control really quick and is not like A.N.T landscape, i.e. it is adjustable constantly, this is a great way of doing it. Don't forget, it's set point rather than transform. Transform's a global thing, set point is for the points, for the vertices. Now, I'll speak to you all soon. Take good care and look after yourselves.